This week's weekly reading of the Torah is Sefer Vayikra. It's the first several chapters in the Book of Leviticus, called in Hebrew Vayikra or Vayikra. This book is perhaps the most notorious of the Bible because it is so full of the laws regarding sacrifices in the temple, and many people have used this particular topic as something to criticize the people of Israel or the Bible about. Just to put it frankly, no, the Jewish people do not make or endorse animal sacrifices in their faith, because we're only allowed to do that in the place that the Lord would choose. That's the wording that the Bible uses, and it's in reference to the place that would be chosen for where the temple would stand. And ever since that has been in Jerusalem, that is the only place we are allowed to make sacrifices. But staying focused on the topic, one of the main reasons that the Book of Leviticus is so notorious is, one, the sacrifices, and two, it has many other ritual type laws in it, and it tends to be overwhelming, I think, to most people. But what one should know is that the majority of these ritualistic sort of laws are not things that the average Israelite or the average Jewish person were ever expected or commanded, even in the Book of Leviticus, to do, but rather they are, pardon the hand, but rather they are laws that are given to the priests, the sons of Aaron, brother of Moses, who would serve in the temple. What I find interesting about the criticisms of the Bible, and especially the Book of Leviticus, is that the Book of Leviticus is actually touching on a matter which is universal in humanity. It acknowledges a inner need that we find in cultures all around the world, in various religions, even among atheists, secularists, agnostics. And that is a need for some sort of community ritual and community practice that people experience together, that renews their commitments and gives them inspiration and hopefully motivates them to do something good, to become better people. You can find such rituals in virtually every single continent on Earth, in every single place in the United States in different forms. And of course we could compare or ask what method or what rituals are more productive, more successful at creating a positive influence as compared to others. Even in secular universities, they have rituals that they do, but they don't call them religion or rituals, but that's what they are. But I would like to point out that one of the main purposes of the ritual of sacrifice in the Book of Leviticus is that in the context of the ancient Middle East, there was quite a big difference between the rituals surrounding the sacrifices in the temple of ancient Israel and those of other peoples in the vicinity. Unfortunately, the Bible records, and archaeology has confirmed, that human sacrifice was a practice in that area of the world at that time, and we know from archaeology that it was a practice in various other places in the world. So God, instead of just pulling the rug out from underneath the feet of society, instead gave them a more kosher or productive way in which to direct this deeply rooted practice of sacrifice that was already existent before the Bible was given. And it was instituted in a way in which it would be centralized, so that you don't have it rampant all over the place, but it's overseen by the scholars, the most educated of the nation. And it would also be a way in which people would come together, because when you make the sacrifice, you also generally would partake of that sacrifice, and you'd have so much, because you needed to eat the whole thing, that you would have to share it with other people. So it would encourage communal interaction with other people. Some sacrifices also went to the priests and sustained their livelihood while they worked in the temple. So it was actually very practical practice, which the Bible states in its prophetic books, the books of the prophets, will one day be restored. I would like to end this short little video with the fact that the second greatest commandment, according to the Gospels, appears in this book. Jesus didn't come up with this teaching, at least didn't come up with it anew in the Gospels, though most people attribute it to Jesus. But he's actually quite explicitly in the Gospels quoting the Book of Leviticus. He was asked by a teacher of Israel, what is the greatest commandment in the Torah and the law of Moses? And that was his response, the first being, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You should love him with all your heart, soul, and means. And he said that the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. So, in the middle of all these sacrifices and ritualistic laws in the Book of Leviticus, God gives a clear reminder that your sacrifices, all your rituals, they are empty. They are nothing. They are an abomination to him if we fail in the most basic and elementary aspect of faith and religion, and that is to be kind to your fellow man. If you neglect that, then your sacrifices are worthless. And this is one of the reasons given in Jewish tradition for why the temple was eventually destroyed. And perhaps it's also, I think, it's quite apparent that this is also the way in which the temple will be restored, when as a nation we repent and mend the broken pieces of our nation, and then can once again come together unified with one goal, to serve God and to love fellow man, and to be as forgiving as we've received forgiveness. But let me end this by reading some of the very moral and ethical laws that are found in the middle of the Book of Leviticus. So, this is from Leviticus chapter 19, all right, in the New Living Translation. Not New Living, just the Living Bible. It says in verse 14, you shouldn't say bad things, speak bad things toward a deaf person, someone who can't hear you, right? Nor put a stumbling block before a blind person. But you should fear the Lord, fear God, for I am the Lord. Obviously the idea is, don't do bad things just because you think you can get away with them, especially toward people who are less fortunate or privileged than yourself. Verse 15, judges should always be just, fair in their sentences, and shouldn't give favor toward a person, whether it's a poor person or a rich person. People usually think of judges being bribed by the rich, but a judge can also be swayed by irrational or unjust compassion towards someone because they are poor. So it's teaching that a judge should not take notice in his judgment whether a person is rich or poor, but they should be perfectly fair. Verse 16, don't gossip. Don't accuse your fellow man of a crime, for I am the Lord. Verse 17, don't hate your brother, but you should surely rebuke anyone who is doing things wrong, to reason with him frankly, so that he won't get away with whatever offense he has done, and you be held equally guilty. Don't seek vengeance, verse 18. Don't seek vengeance, don't bear a grudge, but love your fellow man as yourself, for I am the Lord. Shabbat Tov.